Hey.
Hi, Brandon.
Hi. I'm not real happy right now.
What's going on, man?
Have you been outside in the last 3 or 4 days?
Yeah, it's been pretty brutal.
It's horrible. I am so ready for summer. Like we've talked about it a lot in the past, like fall in the season and scarves and pumpkin spice lattes and all those things. But I cannot get into fall.
Yeah, it's all fun until it's 20 degrees.
Right. Like there's that week, maybe like 3 days where it's pretty, like the trees, the leaves, the colors. It's nice. But then it rains, it snows, you have wet leaves everywhere. It's muddy. I've got snow melting in my garage. Like I'm over it. And we've got like 6 more months of this.
I know.
So,
I know. It's a really down day.
Yeah. Did you see the other downer this last weekend?
No, what happened?
Who Hot? Closed
I did see that.
permanently for good. How do you feel about that?
I think honestly, for our guests, moment of silence.
Let's do that. Yeah, I have so many memories from Who Hot. Like it was like the go-to place for so many years. And
for any teenage boy or like into your 20s and 30s, you can't get more bang for your buck.
Yeah.
It was so nice.
Yeah. And you can't say the food's not good because you are responsible for what you eat.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
So that's sad.
It's a sad day for overeating.
Yeah. So yeah, I know climate's difficult, both figuratively and fiscally here in Missoula right now. But there are other businesses that are thriving.
Okay.
That are growing. I love the stories on this podcast of the businesses that nobody even knows about. You don't really know they exist, but they're just kicking butt just here in Missoula. And that's what I love about today's episode with Hank Donovan, CEO, owner, founder, wears all the hats of Rattlesnake Cables, based right here in Missoula, Montana, just centrally located. And the guy's a machine.
Yeah, he is a busy dude. And he has a really cool story of being in the underground music scene that you'll get into in the episode. But he never stops. He never sleeps. He's so active. Really fun episode.
Take a listen.
Hank, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Awesome. Well, why don't you start us from the beginning and tell us some of your first experiences with Missoula, when you came here, and from the start, and then we'll go there.
All right. So I moved here when I was 1 or less than 1. I was born in Billings and lived through until I was 8, 3rd grade, and I moved to Great Falls and moved to Kalispell and Lakeside, and then moved back to Missoula at a certain point. So I was 21 when I moved to Missoula. Been here ever since. Spent 1 year in California. That was the year I graduated high school, and I was like,
You're coming back. All right.
You know, a year and a half later, I was like, oh man, I miss it. And then I came back, and yeah,
so
glad I did.
When you moved back at 21, was that for college? Was that for working?
Yeah. So I moved when I graduated high school. So I was 18. So it was like 19 and a half, almost 20 when I moved back. It was just time to move back. Yeah. I never went to school. So I just graduated high school. And that's about the furthest education I've had.
Yeah. That's awesome. What was your first job when you came to Missoula?
Oh, first job, Zimmerino's.
Zimmerino's. What was that?
Italian restaurant.
I don't remember.
You don't remember Zimmerino's?
This might be before my time.
Yeah, Zim's was around the 70s, I think 79, 78 when I started, all through the 80s, and then was sold in the mid 90s, late 90s, and then came back at different iterations. Was in Arlee for a while. It was like Zimmerino's Arlee Grill, and then came back in
the pizza over on Broadway. Zimmerino's Pizza.
That was like the final version of it. But at one point, it was where the bicycle hangar is, right next to Charlie's.
Yep,
that whole building was Zimmerino's, all 3 floors.
Whoa!
All the way to the back too. So right now that little spot only just goes halfway, like the bicycle hangar, and then there's a
full custom kitchen back there.
Yeah, so that was dining room and kitchen back in the day, and 2 floors above were offices and banquet hall.
Gotcha.
So cooking is a big part of my life, actually, in those days. Dishwashing, cooking, prep cooking, huge part. Huge part of my business today, actually. We'll probably get into that later. Just as far as aspects of customer service and
Sure.
product development and customer expectation, buyer experience.
So you didn't go to traditional college, but you essentially got a business degree
Oh yeah,
working in
yeah.
the restaurant industry.
I'm also a pod guy, so I listen to marketing business podcasts like all the time. So
Yeah.
I always joke around. I graduated from the University of Mount Sentinel because I go up top of the Mount Sentinel,
I like
listen to
that.
podcasts, and just absorb, and then come back and apply.
Saved yourself 50 grand.
What are some of those
smart.
podcasts that you enjoy? Who do you listen to?
Agents of Change is one I really like. It's Portland, Maine. Great interviews with a variety of entrepreneurs or marketing business. It's just every episode is a different facet of online commerce, e-commerce. Other one is Alex Hormozy. You guys,
Oh yeah.
So I listen to that guy a lot. So yeah, and then
Steven sends me Alex's podcast a lot and says, you need to listen to this. I don't know if it's ever done anything for his life, but Steven thinks I need it. So.
Yeah, well, it's good.
He's simple. He simplifies some pretty complex stuff.
Yep.
Okay, so I know you got into the music scene at some point. Was that when you got here to Missoula, or were you already pretty musically inclined before?
Well, I got my first guitar when I was 18, and I was a huge music fan through high school. It was that point where like music becomes absolutely everything in your life.
Yeah.
But I didn't play, so I was from an observer consuming.
I'm interrupting here. Who were you listening to at that time frame in your life?
It was always punk rock or post-punk or goth.
Really?
So it's one of those. The Cure is still like a huge band for me.
Okay.
But it went from, junior high I was super into metal and Metallica, and then that morphed into like harder punk rock. And then someone handed me a Smiths tape, and I was like, oh man, this is like not heavy at all, but heavy in a different emotional sense. And that's where I think like music, where it took me to a different spot beyond just like, oh, it's got a great beat, you can dance to it. I was like going into like sad songs or angry songs, or like, why is that? And then the next version of it is I want to play those things.
Sure.
And so when I got a guitar and started learning how to play some of my favorite bands and trying to crack that code, there's a part where when you become a musician, it ruins your ability to listen because you're just trying to like reproduce that sound, dissect the song or figure out why it sounds that way. Where before it was just magic. You listen to it. It's like you felt something. That was always really cool. But yeah, so by the time I moved to Missoula, I was doing open mics and writing my own songs and solo kind of songwriter with effects kind of thing in search of a band.
Where were the places to play at that time?
Oh man. So we're talking, this is a long time ago. We're talking I moved here January 1, 1993. So
I mean, he aged himself. Do you hear him say he got handed a tape to listen to? It wasn't a CD or you got a tape.
I was just one step away from 8-track. I know. It's brutal. So back then it was a place called Maxwell's, which is the Badlander now.
Okay.
So it's been like 3 different bars since then. And all the cool punk rock shows used to be a place called Trends with the Z in the end, but that was the Palace downstairs. So I used to see all sorts of just great music there. And I was moving from Kalispell at the time, and Kalispell had nothing. So and Missoula was the big city.
Kalispell still has nothing.
Yeah, I didn't want to say that. You said it. But that's very true though. But when I came to Missoula, it was like moving to New York City or something. And I couldn't believe there was local bands, and there were like bands playing weird music instead of just country tunes or cover bands. And that immediately I started, having friends that were in that scene. And,
Hank, was that the dream for you? Was that the goal, that you wanted to be musician and artist with a band?
At that time in the
touring.
90s, for sure.
Yeah.
That was in the days too, where you can make it, get signed, all those, Nirvana just happened in 1992 or 91 with Smells Like Teen Spirit. So that whole Northwest Seattle thing was a thing where, as a young band, it was like, oh, that could be us. That could be the next thing. Where, nowadays that doesn't happen.
Right.
It's a whole different thing, which I actually enjoy a lot more. Where just create. That's all you need to do is just create. So it was very competitive in a sense. And it was also very demoralizing back then, because you'd send, demo tapes and get rejection letters or never hear back, or It just felt like like winning the lottery to do anything successful in music. So there's a point where you just fall back and say, well, why am I doing it? And either you quit and say, I'm never going to do it again. Or you say, I do it because I'm an artist. I want to make music.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then of course you find all these other people feel the same way as you do.
Yeah.
And hopefully you have the same taste, and that person plays drums, and that person plays bass, and you get together and
you're
happens.
working still like Zimmerino's during this time. Like
yeah,
you're working, you're getting a shift off on a Friday night, then you're heading to go play a show.
Yep. Jay's upstairs too,
Okay.
which is the Loft now.
Yeah.
But that used to be like the grossest, awesomest bar in town. Amazing shows there. That was like late 90s and early 2000s. And yeah, definitely working. And there was a point where my wife, Amy, who's a huge part of Rattlesnake, worked at Zimmerino's also. And there was a point where I was the back of the house and she was the front of the house. And we would sit there at the end of the night, lock up, count the till, everyone's out. We'd have a beer and we'd just be sitting there like, what are we doing? And we didn't have any kids. We were married. And it just felt super dead end. And I didn't want to own a restaurant. Everyone would just sit there and, oh, you're a cook. You like cooking. Therefore, you should own a restaurant.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew how difficult the restaurant game is. And I knew I just didn't have what it took and I didn't want to deal with it and wasn't me. So we just sat there and we were just trying to figure out like, how can we get out of the restaurant? And she got into real estate. I decided I was going to start this business called 10 to 1, which I was going to like come up with 10 different businesses. And one of them was going to make it. And one of them was going to get me out. And I was like web development. I was doing show promotion. I was silk screening t-shirts. I even made birdhouses. That was one of the ones. I was trying to make a hot sauce thing. I was just trying anything, just do stuff. Mm-hmm. And web development was what got me out. So I started working on websites, immediately got a job. This would be like 99, working in a firm in town. And that's sent me that way. She went into real estate and we were both like out of the restaurant and we were going to like get our lives together. We already owned a house, but we didn't have kids. And that was like kind of the direction at that point.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So as you transition into building websites, working for other people, when did you decide, no, I do want to do my own thing? Like how many years were you at that firm?
All the way from like 99 to 2003-ish, I worked for two different web development firms. And at that point I said, I'm going to just do my own. So from like 2004 all the way until 2018, really, I had my own web development firm and I was having clients. And oddly enough, I felt that was a dead end job. Mm-hmm. And I felt very unsatisfied with programming, just putting stuff on hard drives, websites being obsolete in 2 years, 1 year, 3 years, whatever, having to learn the next hot new code language or whatever, and constantly going with the change of technology. It just felt very unfulfilling. And then at the same time, I had all these friends that were musicians and also had a good set of friends that built guitars and actually had businesses that built pedals. And I was like, you guys are actually building something, like something real, something that outlive you. And, 100 years from now, someone's going to like, who made this guitar, And that felt real. And I wanted to go that way. And so I dabbled in pedals. I built one guitar in my life and it was super fun, but I realized I never wanted to do that. It was difficult.
Really long.
Yeah, it was difficult. I was having like panic attacks of different stages of the guitar, because each stage you refine the guitar further. Like the neck took months, and then the last job was to drill the little dots things in it. Like you don't want to mess that up,
right?
Like it was 3 months worth of work to get to this point. And the people I was working with are just like, you get used to that. And I was like, I was having nightmares about it. And I was like measuring 5 times and trying to drill once.
Where's that guitar today?
I still have it.
So you play it? Is it?
Yep.
That's awesome.
Yeah. I still play it. It's a great guitar. I have a lot of pride in that. It just started off as 2 chunks of wood.
Right.
It wasn't a kit. It wasn't like half shaped. It was literally 2 chunks of wood that we got at the hardware store and put it together. And that was amazing. That was with Ryan Ruccavina, who was a great luthier in town. He lives in Anaconda now, but it was an interesting class. It took 6 months, and I basically he built the same guitar in front of me. So I followed each one of his steps. He'd make this cut. Now it's my turn to make the cut. And then,
Wow.
so it was just piece by piece and just late nights and amazing. But I realized that's not for me.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm more of an electronics guy, not a wood guy.
Mhm.
Wood just feels too organic and too, you lose control of it. Like, you know, and it also has a mind of its own. You know, there's grain and there's knots and there's like behaviors that why wood guys like wood. I like things to be consistent and always the same. Electronics is more my thing.
That's awesome. And I know from there that you changed and pursued something on your own, and you're not in a dead end job now. And I want to come back to that. But before we get to that part of the story, I want to hop into our rapid 5 questions, rapid 6, however many there are. We don't know what they're called or how many there are. I think we just kind of
We got to
We just know it's rapid.
So what was your first memory of Missoula when you got here, when you arrived? What stood out about Missoula?
I always remember there's a very, very distinct memory of being a very little kid at the university. And it was some kind of art program where I was working with college students. I must have been 4 or 5 years old, blindfolded out in somewhere outside in the campus where we were collecting maple seeds. And then we went to the top of the building. The whole thing was you had blindfold and all these kids are trying to grab them. And then we take it to the top of the building and we let them go and they're helicoptering down.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just very, very vivid memory of that.
Wild.
What's your favorite go-to coffee spot in Missoula?
Go-to coffee, drum. Southside.
He's a musician.
I should have known that.
Come on, Steven.
That was it.
Favorite restaurant?
Favorite restaurant, man, that is a tough one because they just keep going away. The ones that I love all just seem to go away.
It's evolving, the food scene here in Missoula.
Yeah, I'm still gonna go old school. Dino.
I know.
Oh, wow. Yeah. We haven't got that one.
Yeah,
that's a true
oyster po' boy. I mean, slam dunk every time.
It's amazing.
I think Andrea mentioned.
I think
Dino
she said
Cafe.
the same thing.
She did bring that up.
Nice.
Yeah. What zip code do you live in?
801.
801. Original.
OG.
What's the weirdest thing about Missoula to you?
Weirdest thing about Missoula.
And you can love it too. I mean, we love all the weird stuff as well, but.
Yeah.
Got to keep Missoula weird, Hank.
Octopus. You guys know him?
No. Tell us more.
Yeah, tell us about Octopus.
Well, in the 90s, there was all these weird characters, and there's the preacher, and but the Octopus is a grandmaster chess.
Oh no!
champion.
Yes, we do know.
I know who he is.
Yes. And you just see him
walking the street with his bag.
He's got a pocket protector and carrying the bag and glasses, but he's a grandmaster. Yeah. I've always wanted to, I'll never do it, but there was always a time where like one day I'll play him chess. And there was a friend of mine in the 90s that we were at Finnegan's or Perkins or whatever it is now across the Rattlesnake, post drinking all night, 2 a.m. We're all sitting in a booth. And my friend was a really good chess player. I mean, like really good, smoked me all the time. I'm not good. So that wasn't a big deal.
We should play because neither am I.
Yeah. And we see him over there in the booth. And he goes, I'm going to go play. You used to be able to pay him $5 and he'll play anybody. And he had a little magnetic chessboard. He always has a chessboard with him all the time. And I was like, great. Yeah, have fun. Hope you beat him. And then he like leaves. And I'm like having a conversation with everyone. And it's like 2 minutes later, he's sitting back there. I'm like, I thought you were playing. He's like, yeah, it's over. He's just like, wow. 2 a.m. Smoked you.
Wow. It's wild.
But, yeah.
It's a great story. What do you love the most about Missoula?
That's always changing too. The people here are always great. Raising kids in Missoula is out of control, the best place. And that's one reason why when my wife and I lived here and we were thinking about having kids, I never wanted to move because I moved when I was in 3rd grade. And up to 3rd grade, I thought it was a magical place to grow up.
Yeah.
And so when we had our kids, I was like, I don't want to move. The music scene is fantastic. The only thing that has the flip side to that question is the worst thing about Missoula is also that everyone leaves. So it makes so many amazing friends and, bandmates and musicians and just lifelong friends. And, they're going to school or, going to graduate school. And then it's like, you know them for 5-6 years and they're like, oh, they're off to Portland or they're off to New York or whatever. And you're just like, why are these people leaving? So yeah, I would say the people is great and great place for kids. But my kids are all grown up now, so I have to like phase in like, what are my other favorite
Do your kids
things?
stick around? Are they still in town or?
Yeah, well, I mean, my daughter is a senior in high school, so
Okay.
she's still around, but she's itching to leave. And my son's 22 and he's going to the U, so
Okay.
he's sticking around. But he's got a sweet little apartment.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
What's the most recent book you've read?
Wow. Okay. Well, the Hermosi, $1 Million
$1 Million Leads. I just read that.
Just
as
read
well.
that, and then I just I'm almost done with the Essentialism book.
Nice.
So
what's an essentialism book?
It's lifestyle / business. It's just basically trying to figure out like what's important in your crazy life and trying to like distill things down to the essential important things to like make things economical and efficient in your time. You know, where everyone has like their to-do lists and they have 20 priorities, but technically you only just have one priority, right? So everyone writes 10 priority items. So that book kind of like leans to that. It's really hard to adopt some of the things just because I have 10 priorities and I can't get it down to one, a day or whatever.
I'm adding this question, just a music guy. I'd imagine you get out to Kettle House a few times a year. Mm-hmm. What's the most recent show you went to?
Most recent show cause it's been a while since I've been there. Pixies, not this last one. So 2019.
Okay.
There was a little Butcherettes one too. I think they were like side by side, but I can't remember.
Okay. Where do you go watch music in Missoula usually?
Typically, the Zach. Mm-hmm. I see a lot of shows there. Our Monks. So I'm definitely more in, versus the big shows. Yeah. I see a lot of more
small local stuff.
And, just the hardworking touring bands that are playing, the Top Hat or the WOMA also.
Yeah.
But,
and you can relate. You were there once, the hustle, the grind. And so I think it's awesome that you're going in supporting those.
Do you still have an active band that you're playing in?
Not right now. No, it's kind of on hiatus, but who knows? It could come back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So you're working at the restaurant, then you go into web development. You're not finding a lot of meaning in that. It sounds like then you dabble with some pedals and some guitaring, making guitaring, making guitars. Then when's the big transition come to the genesis of your business?
Yeah. So
what happened? And take us through that.
Well, I was making the pedals and the pedals are great. So I was selling them to a few musicians, but they are challenging because you would make a pedal and if everything goes right, it works. Right. There's a lot of pieces and if something goes sideways, it could take hours, days, weeks to figure it out. So you really try to figure out how to come up with the process. So it's just very streamlined and you can almost do it with your eyes closed. That takes a lot of reps and I didn't have a ton of those reps and it was slightly frustrating. And one day I thought I would make a cable for myself. I was thinking, okay, that's technically 4 solder joints I'd have to make and a pedal could have like 200 solder connections. I was like, this should be easy and plug in my first cable and it doesn't work. I take it apart and the solder joints are already broken on it. I mean, this is like, I don't understand. I solder all day long and I can't get this to work. And it's a different metal and it's a different heat and different thicknesses of wires and it took me a little while. I finally got it and I could not believe how great the cable sounded because the cable impacts your sound of the guitar. A lot of people don't know that, especially if you're not a musician or, you just think it's just connecting and it makes sound, but it does impact the signal. So our cable, what we use is what we call low capacitance cable, which keeps your high end coming through the frequencies. And if you have a cheaper cable and it's or I say high capacitance, low capacitance is what we make. If you get a high capacitance cable, then it like adds low end frequencies. So it sounds like there's a carpet over your amp. And when you get a high end cable, you pull it off and it's just like, oh, it sounds so crispy and like bright and punchy. And all you did was change the cable. So that was an eye opener. And I knew about that. I had experience with some cables that you could do that with, but I didn't actually make one. And so I was starting to understand like the specs that I was like trying to get to, like, okay, what's the capacitance rating I want? What kind of plugs and what kind of length? And I took it to a band practice. It was a Cure. tribute show. So this band,
Nice.
we only did one show, and it was like we were practicing for basically a year for the show, like 12 years ago, 13 years ago. And immediately the bass player is like, "What's that cable?" I was like, "Oh, I made it." He's like, "I want one. Like, can you make me one?" I was like, "Sure." And that was interesting because I usually have to pitch and sell something,
Yeah,
So I was
right.
like, "Oh, that was odd." And then suddenly it was like everyone was asking for it. And then it was like friends of friends. And I was like, "Hey, I heard you made, someone a cable, blah, blah. I want one too." And I was like, "Yeah, I can totally make you one." And then the day that I got a phone call from a person I did not know who was in a
Mm.
band with someone that was a friend of a friend calls me. And I was like, "Wow, I don't even know you. And you're calling me for a cable, and no website, no nothing." Right. And so that was the point where I was, okay, maybe this could be something, maybe it could be something we could sell. And um, it seems to have like an ease to it that I wasn't really expecting. And then immediately I started working on a website for it, real super simple website. And my goal was I made a Facebook page for it. And my goal was I wasn't going to invite any of my friends. That was my thing. Like, okay, I'm going to tell anybody. I'm not going to post it anywhere. I'm not going to post on my profile or anything.
Right.
So I'm just trying to like see if we can get a following on Facebook without Missoula involved, my little circle, my hub. And I think I did it for a year and actually got quite a few follows. And then finally it was like, okay, now we can say something and see. And then some of my friends were jumping on it. Because I was really just trying to prove to myself, like, is there a demand? Is it something there? Is the brand name interesting enough? The product interesting enough? All these things that I wasn't sure about. And so I was not going all in. I didn't quit doing web development. It's a hobby. And then every year we didn't, Amy and I didn't take a cent out of the business, and we would just put it all back in. And manufacturing business is so different than service business. We didn't understand expense and inventory and cost of goods and cost of goods sold. It's just like all this stuff, like no idea, in web, I was just take money, I buy a computer, the rest is profit. It's
Right.
basically, it's just service,
Right.
And
Mhm.
when I bought plugs, I was thinking that was expenses, and it was all very confusing. So both Amy and I had to learn how to actually deal with a manufacturing business. And we just put all our money back in and grew and grew and grew until the point where it's like, then there was the thing where I was like, this is what I want to do. Right. This is fun as a hobby and it was great. But I think this is like so satisfying. And it was brutal at that time because I'd work 9 to 5 web. And then as soon as I'd eat dinner, 6 o'clock, okay, rattlesnake time till midnight and go to bed and do that 7 days a week. And when we
Mm.
started getting our first people working there, they would come in at night, 7 o'clock at night, 8 o'clock to 11, work in our basement until the point where we can start downscaling our web development, which was big money. I'm like saying no to clients and like long existing paychecks and service agreements. I was like ending them.
Mm.
And we still haven't got a paycheck from Rattlesnake, but I needed the time. I wanted that time.
Mhm.
So eventually it got to, just the mornings I was just doing web, and then so I had the afternoons, and then it was just okay.
And during that time, did you find yourself like looking at the clock, like counting down how long till you could
Oh,
go
yeah.
do the rattlesnake? Because
Yeah.
that was the fun.
Yeah, and it was also I was punishing myself too because I'd be working on web, and we have like a thing that goes cha-ching when there's an order that comes in, So I'd be working, go cha-ching, cha-ching, and I knew those are cables that need to get made, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
was like, I gotta finish this thing so I can, this is gonna be a busy night tonight, and so it was great. About 2018, 19, we finally were able to cut all of our web clients out and then go full time, and then we started taking a paycheck, obviously,
Yeah.
and that's where we started building our team. And
So let's talk about that. So you launched what's called Rattlesnake.
Yep.
Rattlesnake Cables is
Yep.
your company. What does Rattlesnake Cables do?
well, we build high-end. That's weird. Going right into that. Rattlesnake Cable Company builds high-end instrument cables.
Okay.
So we always feel like just every musician should have a great cable, and that's what we're always wanting to try to achieve and give people that opportunity. And we always also sideline that with customer service. So there's a point too where the component of our business is where we want to make sure a musician has confidence and trust and a connection with the business that they're purchasing that product from. And 'cause we always like having this relationship. So really, Rattlesnake Cables builds all sorts of instrument cables, speaker cables, patch cables, mic cables for musicians.
And you had mentioned earlier that, in launching this on Facebook, you wanted to see if the brand resonated with people, if they even cared.
Mhm.
Obviously, you've put a lot of time, energy, effort into the brand, the marketing, the logo. Where did the name? I mean, I would assume you live up the Rattlesnake originally.
Everyone in Missoula thinks that.
Right. So
we don't live in the
where's Rattlesnake come from?
So originally, my good friend Leif is one that helped actually come up with that name, because I came up with the question of, I want a cable company that has some kind of connection with Missoula, but I didn't want to do Zootown Cables, Zula Cables. I didn't want to do that. Right. And I wanted something that would have appeal to multiple genres of players, because I didn't want death cables and skull cables. You know what I mean? Right. And a jazz guy wouldn't want it. Right. And so I wanted to figure out all of these. And I remember throwing these problems to Leif, and he just came right back. Goes, Rattlesnake Cable Company. That's what you should name it. So just Rattlesnake could be Rattlesnake Creek, could be Rattlesnake Wilderness, could be Rattlesnake Area. It's just a tip of the hat to Montana. Rattlesnake Snakes. It's just a tip of tip of the hat to the region. It has that appeal where a Tex-Mex blues player is right next to a metal dude, right next to a jazz guy, and they all can sit there and relate with Rattlesnake, even though it's not like pigeonholing or stereotyping and excluding one genre from another, right? So it really hit all those notes. I was just like, right when he said it, I was like, oh my God, that's
it.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, he's like, it feels like a snake, and there's all these things. And I was like, wow, that was the easiest decision ever. So I still thank him every time I see him. Like, man, thanks for the name.
It's awesome. Yeah. And great branding. I mean, logos, graphics.
Yeah.
I imagine now, knowing your story, you manage the website and
have
your hands involved in that. So you still have one client, and it's yourself. But
it's the worst client ever.
Well done. Branding's phenomenal.
I'm interested, circling back to your story. What was so much more meaningful about creating cables than doing web design? Why did you want to do that?
Well, to me, it's about creating any kind of tool or interaction a musician can use. So I have a connection with the musician. When I was making the pedals, I had this like vision, like, oh, I can't wait till I'm like 80 years old and I'm not cool enough and relevant enough to play in a band in a cool little place, but I want to be that weirdo that the 20 something year old musician comes in and is like, can you make me the thing that does the thing? And I'm like, yeah, let's do this. Right. Even though I'm not doing that and it's just cables, there's still an element of I'm helping them create their music. And that's really fulfilling when you see it and you go on stage and you say, wow, every one of those players are using Rattlesnake. It feels really good. And it's like they're using it to, get their art done. And that's that aspect is super fulfilling.
Yeah.
So I wasn't really worried about, oh, it's just a cable. It's really doesn't mean, it means a lot to me. So, without that cable, it doesn't matter. Yeah. So, yeah.
Hank, what's like the average cost for a cable on your website?
Average cost, they go from $59.99. So $60 is probably the lowest you can go with for a 10 footer. It all depends on if you want a mic cable or a speaker cable, but anywhere between like $40 and up to $80.
So you guys are doing some serious volume. I mean, you got rid of the web business and you're doing this full time. I mean, that's a lot of cables.
A lot of cables.
Yeah. To take care of your family. And that's awesome.
Yep.
And you're no longer doing this in your basement, I take it. Okay.
No.
All right. When did you guys purchase your own property for the business?
It was 2000. It was a year and a half ago. So, during the pandemic, we were looking, I mean, we were bumping elbows. There was, the guy right next to me, I could hit him while we're soldering cables. That's how close we were. And when there'd be multiple people down there, I mean, you're just like, like squeaking by, everyone, excuse me, behind you. And, and it was always a really fun vibe, and it was great having it in there. And, we just were bursting at the seams, and we were looking for lease spaces, and it was just so expensive. And we just found a really great deal on this property, and we were able to beg, borrow, and steal and pull it out and get it. Now, when we walk around there, I'm like literally embarrassed that I like made everyone deal with that for so long. It's like we have a break room. We used to open up a card table in the middle of our basement in the wintertime, and I think that, I think they have fond memories of it, but there's a part of me that's like, man, I'm so sorry they had to deal with that.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I'm kind of insecure right now because we got cables all over the place in our studio, and I'm wondering what Hank's thinking of
Oh,
of our
yeah.
podcast cables
Yeah.
here.
Just think of the potential.
Yeah, oh my gosh.
Yeah.
We're gonna start
We'll
getting
have to call-
solicited. Yeah,
This
we're gonna
pod
get
would be
ads.
so much like clearer, maybe. I don't
Clear.
know. I don't know.
The frequencies would be so much better on my voice.
We'll bring you on as a consultant.
If we had
We'll
a
see what we
rattlesnake
can do.
cable. Hank, I would imagine some pretty big name musicians out there purchased your cables, have used them. That's got to feel great to have those reviews or endorsements. Any of those stories you can share with us?
I mean, all the big, I always just joke around, like all the big ones, they don't even know who I am, but they sometimes they actually get to use the cable. So like Robert Smith is one, my hero, but it's because I was working with the guitar tech. So, I mean, Robert doesn't know who I am.
Sure.
Maybe he does, but I doubt it.
He just knows his tech got him a nice cable.
So there's a lot of like heroes that I was able to send cables to when I could. Yaz are using them right now because I'm friends with their guitar tech, and the ones the range that I absolutely love are what I just call like the real semi-pro or pro musicians, where they're not rock stars. That's the difference. Rock stars get free stuff all day, and they're rock stars.
Yeah.
The semi-pro and the pros are the ones, smaller bands, but literally are on tour 300 days a year. They've been doing it for 10 years. That's the level that, that they love to be in. So there's, bands like Earthless that use it, Russian Circles. And these are just, the bands that you play at the Wilma, but they're just hardworking. So when they get a deal on cables or they get free cables, they are like, whoa, that's awesome. Thank you. Because they're hard on their gear and they're just running all the time. Eventually they're going to hit that next level, but I really love enjoying working with that tier of bands primarily, because it's just like, and they're the ones that are great because they talk about you, and they often are on tour with other bigger bands because that's what they're doing. They're just running a circuit and they're just like hopping on different tours all year.
And they're marketing for you.
Yeah.
If they love the product.
Yeah.
Hank, you got such a cool story, and I can tell that you're passionate. Just because a lot of entrepreneurs out there listen to the show, we don't want to act like it's all been easy for you. But so what is like some of the challenges you're now facing as a business owner in Missoula recently that maybe you can tell us a little bit about, or how have you overcome it?
It's the same stuff I'm sure everyone goes through. Supply chain was a nightmare for us. We used to have our cable milled, and it used to take 6 weeks, put a purchase order in, and we'd have cable delivered in 6 weeks. And then it turned into 3 months, 6 months, 9 months now. Copper prices are at all-time high. Our plugs, you used to get them, you used to just order them every month. And now it's 3-4 months out. So now you have to like tie in all your cash into inventory, which, before we didn't have to have quite so much inventory. So that was always a struggle. It's getting better. It seems like every month it seems to be a little better, but there's still fear that I'm always waiting for the supply chain to tighten up. And then you get caught with, if you're a cable company, you can't run out of cable or plugs. Those are just two facts right there. So we got to make sure we don't. And that's always a panic mode where we're like, okay, if it is getting weird, do we have enough? Do we got 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, whatever we have? So that's a thing. Labor, we have like a fantastic team. So we've been so lucky to have such a great team stick with us and be a part of our group. But yeah, I think it's just a lot of the stuff that everyone goes through. And then marketing challenges. I think we're always just trying to figure out how to keep pushing when it's not great.
Yeah. Where is most of your advertising come from? Are you guys digital ads? Is that?
Yep. So we primarily focus on our mailing list to digital ads, Facebook and Google primarily. We've explored a few other things, but that's where I think a lot of businesses, when I talk to business owners, I think they have a problem with is when things are like flatlining, they just tend to like hunker. And it's just like, I think it's all about pushing through it. Even if it's a bad month, you should try to figure out how to make that the best month every month instead of being so reactive and passive instead of just being active and saying, what do we got to do to make it a best month?
Hank, for you as a business owner, business leader, HR, I mean, doing everything you do as an entrepreneur, what at the end of the day, what do you consider a win in business?
A win in business. I mean, to me, I just think knowing your numbers and eliminating guesswork and every day is to be somewhat predictive to me is my win.
Oh.
So I look at numbers every morning. I have a daily scorecard that I look through, and every day I'm sitting there assessing where I am in the day, the week, the month, and the quarter, and the year. Every day. And so there shouldn't be any surprises.
So is that where you would attribute your success to as a business owner?
I think that's part of it.
Yeah.
I think it's part of it. I've told many people that I feel like COVID actually made us a much better business, because that's the beginning of, before we used to just do business like everyone else, just like money comes in, money goes out, and like, oh, it's a better month than last month. Oh, great. That was surprising, that kind of stuff. And then when COVID hit and that scramble, that made us, okay, let's understand our expenses and how much are we spending on this, and we need to make this much to break even, and it really sharpened the saw, as they say. But
it's amazing. Hank, we're really thankful that we got such an awesome business here in Missoula, and what it seems like to me that you've mixed all your passions into this baby right here, and that's why it's been successful. So we wish you the best of luck. We've really enjoyed having you on the podcast.
Awesome.
And
if people want to find more information, how do they get in touch with you? Website, domains, where are you located?
I mean, we're on the socials with Rattlesnake Cables. Our website's rattlesnakecables.com. I don't know if it's cool, but I have a discount for listeners.
Oh, absolutely.
That'd be amazing.
You go to Missoula or rattlesnakecables.com/the Missoula podcast. There'll be a discount.
And look at that. I feel like we've just arrived. We have our own domain on another website. But again, www.rattlesnakecables.com/the Missoula podcast.
Yeah, if you're a musician, check it out. Yeah. He's got some really cool stuff.
That's awesome. Very generous of you. Appreciate it, Hank. Best of luck to you and all that is to come in the future of Rattlesnake Cables.
Cool. Thanks for having me.